Welcome to Allies or Enemies. This time we are talking about Joyride, Survival of the Fastest. Our copy was provided for review, but the thoughts are all our own. Designed by Duncan Molloy and Pete Ward, Joyride is a 2 to 4 player game that combines dirt road racing with a bit of demolition derby. Think Mario Kart meets Mad Max, mixed with some old school RC Pro-Am. It's as much about strategy as it is speed, but we'll come back to that after we look at how it plays.
At the start of the game, you'll choose one of a dozen different track setups, using one of the two sides of the board, setting up various gates, and choosing the weapons that you'll be using. Then, you'll pick a driver, place them at the start line with their gearbox in second gear, and have a couple of dice ready to go. Each turn, you have 5 steps. Start, which is when you use some weapons and skills. Lock, during which you can steer and then lock any number of dice without changing their values, and then drive that amount. Shift, which is moving up or down a gear and gaining or losing dice accordingly. Roll, which is a chance to steer if you haven't yet, or if you're in second gear. And roll any remaining dice and move that amount, and end, where you're going to move your dice back to your mirror. Of course, as you do this, plenty of stuff might happen, including gaining or using various items and weapons, using special abilities, crashing into other cars or walls, and getting blown up in various ways, which makes you add damage to your damage slots. The goal of all of this is to do 2 laps by passing through the various checkpoints in order by whatever route you choose. Whoever completes their second lap first is the winner and will survive to race another day.
The biggest boost to replayability are the tracks. Joyride has a 2-sided board. One side is a classic demolition derby junkyard, while the other side adds jumps at either end, which can create fun leaps and crashes. Each of these sides has 6 suggested layouts, with a mix of tracks suggested for different player counts. But on top of these 12 tracks, there are also tips for making your own, which you definitely can. Other than the tracks, the base game comes with 4 different drivers, each with different skills, as well as a set of beginner skills for new racers. And finally, there are the weapons, which you can freely mix and match as you like. And these fall into attack weapons like missiles and airstrikes, hazards like oil slicks and mines, and boosts like the nitro. There are also a few mini expansions, which adds another car, some boost strips, and a couple more thematic weapons. It is maybe not necessary for your first game, but it left us wanting even more.
The star of the show here are the big wooden cars. We haven't seen cars done like this before, and it took us a race to get used to, but it does work really well. And the art by Pye Parr certainly helps. The whole game has a kind of punkish tank girl vibe to it. It feels like Junkertown or Thunderdome, with a mix of junkyard and neon that very much matches what's going on in the race. The player boards are solid as well, and have 2 sides, with one showcasing the busy art and the other a bit more functional for those who want things a smidge cleaner. Each car also has its own set of dice, which are nice and wooden. We had to dig deep to find a complaint here, but perhaps the one tricky we had was initially understanding which was the front of a couple of the cars, but even here there's an arrow on the bottom that will help you remember.
Joyride plays for 2 to 4 players and offers both free-for-all and team racing modes. The 2-player specific tracks tend to close off chunks to create a tighter circuit, and it mostly does work fairly well. You do lose a bit of the mayhem, but we've still had fun going head to head. At 3 or 4 players, the tracks get bigger, and there is even more chaos with more weapons going off and more cars smashing into each other. The other thing that changes is the catch-up mechanic gets a bit more pronounced, as racers get to flip a number of special abilities equal to the spots they are behind after the first lap. In 2 players, this will only ever be 1, but at 4, that can mean all 3, which is a big boost. The team mode is also interesting as it ends once one team member crosses the finish line, which ends up meaning one teammate races while the other goes on defensive smashing duty. The team mode can also work well if you want to play a two-player game with 2 cars each. It has become our default way to play, and because the game is fairly simple, the extra overhead really doesn't feel like too much.
Joyride is a bit of a different kind of racing game. There's certainly a race, but because of the demolition derby crashing, freedom to choose your own route, and weapons, it feels a lot more free-flowing than any other race game that we've played. There is also a lot of freedom in choosing your track, available weapons, and cars. There are some potential obstacles, however. While some will like the potential for big shifts, others might be turned off by the chaos of it all, especially the crashes that can throw you way off course or leave you facing the wrong way. Also, while the rules are fairly light, they can be a bit tricky to get a handle on at first, particularly when you can steer and the different kinds of collisions and explosions. After a race or two, you'll probably be fine, but there is definitely a learning curve. All in all, however, Joyride brought something totally different to our mix of racing games, and we found ourselves backing it to a few board game nights to show it off. If you want a different kind of racing game, and you're fine with a solid helping of chaos, this one could be well worth taking for a spin. And that is it. Have you played Joyride? And what other racing games would you recommend? Please let us know in the comments. And as always, please do like and subscribe. And hopefully, we'll see you next time for another game.